In my past life, when the traffickers rushed toward us, I saved my brother and got taken instead. 15 years later, my biological parents found me, but I never got a single day of their love. My brother always walked arm in arm with Crystal, the fake daughter who framed me. He warned me coldly. My only sister will forever be Crystal, and just as he wished, still ended my life. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day we met the traffickers. 6-year-old Ethan looked at me, panic written all over his face. Willow, save me, but this time I didn't rush over like I did before. Instead, I replied coldly, see you in 15 years, brother. After Ethan was taken by the traffickers, Mom and Dad were devastated. They put up missing person posters everywhere, TV stations, newspapers, offering huge rewards, but it was all useless. I remembered the family who bought me. In my past life, they lived so far out in the countryside that it took half a day just to walk to the nearest town. Ethan's fate wouldn't be any better, sure. My parents were heartbroken. Right now, the pain was overwhelming them, but it was fine. They would forget. Just like in my past life, when they lost me, their real daughter. They were also devastated and couldn't go on later because they missed having a daughter so much they adopted a girl. They poured all their love into that adopted daughter. Even after they found me their biological daughter, it didn't shake her position in the family one bit. The most ridiculous part, when the adopted daughter got sick and needed a kidney transplant, they both got down on their knees and begged me, their real daughter, to give her my kidney. So nothing is irreplaceable, not even parents or children. Time flew by. It had been almost a year since Ethan disappeared. I kept telling my parents how lonely I was, how much I missed having a brother. Every time Mom would cry, she suggested to Dad, maybe we should adopt a boy. I had already guessed this would happen. So, when they told me their decision, I said, can we adopt an older brother? Instead, I want someone who can take care of me. Their faces grew heavy. But they didn't object, since we were adopting a brother. They needed my approval. They took me to many orphanages. We met lots of boys around the right age, but I wasn't satisfied with any of them. One day, we visited an orphanage in a remote area. The place looked pretty run down. After searching around and not finding who I was looking for, we were about to leave. The chubby director suggested, Mom, adopt a girl instead. He said they had a girl my age who was incredibly sweet, polite, and smart. After weeks of exhausting searches, Mom was tired. She agreed to meet her. When the girl walked out, froze. It was her, Crystal Bennett, the adopted daughter my parents treasured like a precious jewel. In my past life, she seemed just as shocked to see me. Her sweet smile turned into complete disbelief as she blurted out, how is this possible? We stared at each other. Mom frowned. Director Harper, is this the girl you were talking about? Director Harper looked embarrassed. Mrs. Wilson, I'm sorry. Crystal is probably just excited to meet you for the first time. Crystal, this is the CEO of Evergreen Corporation and his wife. Don't be rude. Crystal seemed to snap out of it. She quickly changed her expression, becoming careful and polite. Hello, sir. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be rude. Mom nodded and studied her carefully, then asked some questions. Crystal answered everything, perfectly, acting sweet and obedient. After the conversation, I could tell Mom liked her. Even Dad looked satisfied. But here's the thing. The person who held Crystal's fate in her hands right now, that was me. Willow Wilson. Willow, how about we bring this big sister home? Mom came over and spoke to me gently. No, the moment I said it, Crystal's face went pale. She looked at me with shock and desperation. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say something, but she held it in. My firm answer, surprise, Mom. She tried to convince me, actually, having an older sister might be nice. You two could wear matching dresses, do each other's hair, play hide and seek together. No, seeing I wouldn't budge, Mom gave up. She sighed. I'm sorry. Director Harper, we can't adopt this girl. It's fine, Mrs. Wilson. Director Harper said she understood. No, suddenly Crystal screamed and broke down. Why is this happening? Mom, it's me, Crystal. Dad, don't you recognize me? Mom and Dad jumped, completely confused. They had no idea what this girl was talking about. Crystal rushed over and hugged Mom tightly, tears streaming down her face, as if Mom would disappear any second. Mom, I've been waiting here for you and Dad for so long. Please take me home. I can't stand staying here another day. Where's Ethan? Why didn't he come? Mom was terrified by her bizarre words. She quickly pushed her away. Why are you calling me Mom? Are you mentally unstable? Crystal froze. She wiped her tears and tried to explain. No, Mom, I'm perfectly fine. In my past life, this is where you came and took me home. Everyone except me had no idea what she was talking about. Mom and Dad's expressions completely changed. Probably didn't expect Director Harper to recommend someone mentally unstable. Director Harper looked mortified. She quickly called for staff to take Crystal away. Crystal panicked She kicked and fought the staff, struggling frantically. No, I'm not leaving. I want to go home with mom and dad. Get off me. I'm the real daughter of Evergreen Corporation. That woman is a fake mom. I'm your precious daughter. The two staff members dragged Crystal out forcefully. For a long time after we could still hear her heartbreaking screams echoing through the courtyard, mom was shaken. She grabbed my hand and rushed out. Willow, let's go. We can't stay here. There's an unstable person here. In my past life, she was the precious jewel in my mom's eyes. And in this life, she became a mentally unstable person. Even I couldn't handle mom's completely opposite attitudes, let alone Crystal talk about destroying someone's soul. After 3 whole months of searching, I finally found Phoenix Sterling in an orphanage in the neighboring city. When the director brought me to him, he was fighting with a group of boys. His face was bruised when I was swollen, and his arm was bleeding, even though he was getting beaten badly. His eyes were stubborn and fierce like a little wolf. He refused to give up. My eyes instantly welled up with tears. In my past life, whenever other kids at the orphanage bullied me, he would fight them off, just like this. Even if it was 1 against 10, even if he got beaten to a pulp, even if the director punished him by not letting him eat for 3 days, he would always comfort me in a carefree voice. Stop crying. Didn't I teach them a lesson for you? But they beat you up so badly. Doesn't it hurt? A little pain is nothing for a man. Don't worry, I promised I'd protect you, and I always keep my word. The little boy's strong words still echoed in my ears. Phoenix, this time it's my turn to protect you. When I told my parents I wanted to bring Phoenix home, they didn't understand clearly. They had already heard about his reputation from the other kids at the orphanage. But I didn't care. I insisted. They had no choice but to agree. And just like that, 8-year-old Phoenix Sterling came home with me. When he saw the Wilson family's luxurious living room, the dazzling crystal chandelier, the soft and expensive Persian rugs, he seemed tense. He instinctively hid his ragged sleeves behind his back. Why did you adopt me? I led him to a second-floor bedroom and pulled open the thick curtains. The floor-to-ceiling windows were spacious and bright. Sunlight streamed through a ginkgo tree outside, casting dappled light across the room. I turned around and gave him a warm smile. Because in this life, it's our turn to live a good life, of course. He didn't understand. He looked at me confused. Who's this? Phoenix pointed out a photo frame on the bookshelf. It was Ethan sitting in a toy car taken on his 6th birthday last year. Nobody. I picked up the frame and threw it in the trash without hesitation. I remembered how Ethan coldly told me in my past life that he would only ever recognize Crystal as his sister. Perfect. In this life, I don't need him as a brother anyway. After a moment, Phoenix looked up at me again. His bright eyes held a hint of uncertainty and defiance. How long are you planning to keep me? 3 months or 6? As far as I knew, Phoenix had already been abandoned twice before. One couple adopted him purely for publicity, to boost their factory's reputation. After the newspapers hyped it up, they brought Phoenix home and then ignored him. Phoenix got beaten up every day by their fat son, turning black and blue, but just so he could go to school. Just so people wouldn't mock him for being an orphan without parents. At only 5 years old, he endured it all. Later, the fat kid got more violent and even pushed him down the stairs from the 2nd floor. Plus, the couple's factory went bankrupt, so they sent Phoenix back to the orphanage. Before leaving that house, Phoenix couldn't take it anymore. He fought back hard, hitting the fat kid until he cried. From that moment on, Phoenix realized that to avoid being bullied, only strength could solve everything. About 6 months later, Next was adopted, again by a middle-aged couple who couldn't have children. This time was luckier. The couple wasn't wealthy, but they treated him decently at least. No one beat him up, and he didn't have to live in constant fear. But the peaceful days didn't last long. The wife got pregnant. The couple barely thought twice before dumping Phoenix back at the orphanage. After that, Phoenix's heart died. He stopped hoping to be adopted. His temper grew worse. He got into fights constantly, and he kept to himself. Until years later, when I showed up at the orphanage, 2 kids who were both outcasts gradually became friends. Remembering all this, I walked over to Phoenix and said seriously, "Not 3 months, not 6, you can stay in this home forever. Until you decide you want to leave." He stared at me without blinking. His dark, bright eyes were like brilliant stars in the night sky. For a long, long time, he said nothing. Although my parents initially objected to bringing Phoenix home, they quickly changed their tune. Nobody knew better than me how smart Phoenix was. After just 3 piano lessons, he could play an entire pop song from memory after 2 months of chess lessons. His teacher couldn't beat him anymore as for academics. But in 3rd grade, he was already reading 5th grade math books. He never scored below 100 in English or any other subject. My parents' smiles came back. especially when they heard every teacher praise Phoenix endlessly. They invested in Phoenix's education. Just like they did for me, they signed him up for training classes he was interested in. They brought him to high society events, letting Phoenix mingle with other kids from wealthy and powerful families. Phoenix was strikingly handsome and academically exceptional. His personality was a bit aloof, but that was a minor flaw. Some influential people even started scheming for their daughters, discussing with my dad about becoming in-laws. Dad was secretly pleased, but he politely declined. After all, they were too young. From then on, my parents paid even more attention to Phoenix and became stricter with his education. His clothes, food, everything else were exactly the same as mine. Their biological daughter, Phoenix, and I became as close as we were in my past life. One day after school, a figure suddenly darted into the middle of the road. Our driver, Oliver, panicked and jerked the steering wheel. The car spun out of control toward the other side. Phoenix reacted instantly. He lunged over and held me tightly in his arms, and the car crashed into a roadside planter. Phoenix nervously checked my body. I let out a breath and shook my head. Thankfully, only the front of the car was damaged. All three of us were fine. Oliver's face went white. He angrily got out of the car, only to find a little girl standing there. Oliver, it's me, Crystal Bennett. Crystal Bennett stood in front of the car, her knees scraped and bleeding, her dress filthy. She looked nothing like the precious jewel of my past life. She looked like a desperate alley cat. I know where he is, Crystal screamed, her eyes locking onto mine through the windshield. I know where Ethan is. Oliver, the driver, hesitated. The commotion had drawn a small crowd. I saw Phoenix's hand tighten into a fist. He was ready to jump out and protect me, but I placed a hand on his arm to calm him. Stay here, I whispered. I stepped out of the car. Crystal's eyes lit up with a mix of triumph and malice. She thought this was her ticket in. She thought that by using the memories of her past life, where she likely knew where the traffickers took Ethan, she could bargain her way into the Wilson family. Willow, she cried, lunging forward. I had a dream, a vision. I saw your brother. Please, take me to your parents. I can help find him. I stared down at her, my expression unreadable. In her past life, she had been the princess, and I was the dirt. Now, the roles were reversed. Oliver, I said calmly, call the police. Tell them a mentally unstable child is obstructing traffic and attempting to extort us. Crystal's jaw dropped. What? No. I'm telling the truth. I know the traffickers took him to the Blackwood district. I know he's being held by a man named Scar. I froze, just for a fraction of a second. She did know. She was using the tragic details of my brother's kidnapping as leverage. If you know where he is, I said, my voice projecting so the gathering crowd could hear, why haven't you told the police? Why are you stopping a private car to demand money? Are you withholding information about a kidnapped child for profit? The crowd began to murmur. Crystal panicked. No. I need to see Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. You're lying, I said coldly. Just like you lied at the orphanage about being their daughter. I got back in the car. Drive, Oliver. Go around her. As we pulled away, I watched Crystal in the rearview mirror. She was screaming, pounding her fists on the asphalt. But inside, my heart was racing. If Crystal knew where Ethan was, she would eventually find a way to get my parents' attention. I had to move faster. That night, I went to my father's study. Phoenix stood silently by the door, guarding me as always. Dad, I said, handing him a piece of paper. I heard a rumor at school today. Someone mentioned seeing a boy who looks like me in the Blackwood district. I gave him the information Crystal had screamed, but I presented it as my own finding. If Ethan was to be found, I would be the savior, not Crystal. I would control the narrative. My parents mobilized instantly. Police raids were organized. Money was thrown at the problem. 3 days later, they found him. Ethan Wilson was brought home on a rainy Tuesday. He was 11 years old now, but he looked older. His skin was rough, his eyes shifty and feral. He had a jagged scar running down his cheek. When he walked into the living room, he didn't look like the young master of a corporation. He looked like a cornered rat. Mom burst into tears and rushed to hug him. Ethan. Oh, my baby. You're finally home. Ethan stood stiffly, his arms hanging by his sides. He didn't hug her back. His eyes darted around the room, assessing the wealth, the crystal chandelier, the expensive vases. Finally, his gaze landed on me, and then on Phoenix. Who the hell is that? Ethan asked, his voice cracking and coarse. That's Phoenix, Mom said, wiping her tears. We adopted him, to keep Willow company while you were gone. Ethan sneered. He walked up to Phoenix, who was a head taller and infinitely more composed. Get out of my chair, Ethan spat, pointing to the spot on the sofa Phoenix had just vacated. Phoenix didn't flinch. He looked at Ethan with a calm, predatory stillness. "Welcome home, Ethan." I said, "Move." Ethan shoved Phoenix. Phoenix didn't budge. It was like shoving a statue. "Ethan," Dad barked, looking shocked. "That is your brother. Behave yourself." Ethan turned on Dad, his face twisting into a mask of ugly rage. "Brother? I don't have a brother. And I don't have a sister." He pointed a dirty finger at me. "She ran away. She left me there. She promised to save me, and she ran." The room went silent. Mom looked at me, her eyes wide. "I was 6, Ethan," I said softly, my voice trembling just enough to sound heartbroken. "I was terrified. I ran to get help. If I hadn't run, we both would have been taken." "Do you wish I had been sold too?" "Yes," Ethan screamed. "At least then I wouldn't have been alone." My parents looked horrified. Not at me, but at the sheer malice coming from their biological son. They remembered the sweet 6-year-old boy. This was a stranger. Over the next year, the house became a battlefield. Ethan was unmanageable. He cursed at the maids, stole money from Dad's wallet, and refused to study. He had missed 5 years of education and had zero interest in catching up. The tutors Dad hired all quit within a week. Meanwhile, Phoenix continued to shine. He won the devastatingly competitive National Mathematics Olympiad. He played Chopin at charity galas, charming the investors Dad needed to impress. The contrast was brutal. One evening, I heard my parents arguing in their bedroom. "He's ruining our reputation, George," Mom sobbed. "He bit the son of a senator today. He eats with his hands. He smells like the streets. I try to love him, but he pushes me away." "He needs time, Martha," Dad sighed, though he sounded exhausted. "But look at Phoenix. That boy is a genius. He's everything an heir should be." "I know," Mom whispered. "Sometimes, God forgive me, sometimes I wish we had never found Ethan." I stood outside the door, a cold smile touching my lips. In my past life, they had wished I was dead so they could love Crystal. In this life, they wished their real son was gone so they could keep their perfect adopted one. Human nature is so painfully predictable. It was inevitable that Ethan would find Crystal. Like calls to like. I was 14 when I caught them. I was leaving school when I saw Ethan huddled in an alleyway near the campus. He was smoking a cigarette, a habit he picked up in the slums. Standing next to him was Crystal. She looked better than she had years ago. She was wearing a decent school uniform, though from a much cheaper public school. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. I signaled Phoenix to wait and crept closer to listen. "She's a witch, Ethan," Crystal was whispering, her hand on his arm. "Willow isn't normal. She knows things. She stole your life. And that boy, Phoenix? He's just a stray dog she picked up to replace you." "I hate them," Ethan spat, kicking a trash can. "Dad looks at that bastard like he's gold, and looks at me like I'm garbage. And Willow, she acts so innocent. But I see her laughing at me." "I can help you," Crystal cooed. "I know how to get rid of them. But you have to trust me. I'm the only one who really understands you. We're soulmates, Ethan. In another life, we were meant to be siblings." I stepped back, a chill running down my spine. Crystal was playing the long game. She couldn't get adopted, so she decided to seduce the heir. She was grooming Ethan to be her weapon. I walked back to the car. "What is it?" Phoenix asked, reading the tension in my shoulders. "The rats are organizing," I said. "We need to accelerate the plan." Phoenix took my hand. His fingers were long, strong, and warm. "Whatever you need, Willow. I'm yours." I looked at him. He was 16 now, breathtakingly handsome, with a quiet intensity that terrified everyone but me. "We need to make sure that when Ethan falls," I said, "he falls so hard he can never get up. And he needs to drag Crystal down with him." The climax arrived on my 18th birthday. My parents threw a lavish gala at the Evergreen estate. It was also meant to be the night Dad announced who would be the successor to the company. Tradition dictated it should be Ethan, the biological son. But Ethan was a disaster, a high school dropout with a gambling addiction and a violent temper. Phoenix, on the other hand, had just been accepted to Harvard with a full scholarship and was already managing one of Dad's subsidiaries with record profits. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite. I wore a gown of midnight blue, looking every bit the heiress. Phoenix stood by my side in a tuxedo, looking like a prince. Ethan was there, too. He was drunk. He wore a suit that didn't fit right, and he was glaring at everyone. Hanging off his arm was Crystal. She had managed to claw her way in as his +1. Midway through the evening, Dad took the stage. The music stopped. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dad began, his voice booming. "Tonight, I celebrate my daughter Willow. But I also must look to the future of Evergreen Corporation." Ethan straightened up, a smirk playing on his lips. Crystal whispered something in his ear. It has been a difficult decision, Dad continued. But I believe merit, character, and capability must lead us. Therefore, I am naming Phoenix Sterling as the executive vice president and my successor. The room erupted in applause. Ethan froze. His face went purple. He shattered his champagne glass on the floor.
No.
Ethan screamed, charging the stage. You can't do this. I'm your son. He's just a stray dog. Ethan, stop. Mom cried out. Ethan ignored her. He grabbed the microphone stand and swung it, nearly hitting Dad. Security guards rushed forward, but Ethan pulled out a knife. The crowd screamed. Crystal stood in the back, her eyes wide. This wasn't part of her plan. She wanted him to inherit the money, not go to prison. You all hate me, Ethan roared, waving the knife. Especially you. He pointed the blade at me. You stole everything. I should have let the traffickers take you. He lunged at me. Time seemed to slow down. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Before the knife could come within a foot of me, a shadow moved. Phoenix was there. He didn't just block the attack, he dismantled it. With a fluid, brutal motion, he caught Ethan's wrist, twisted it until the bone snapped with a sickening crack, and slammed Ethan face first into the floor. Ethan screamed in agony. Phoenix placed a polished shoe on Ethan's back, pressing him into the marble. He looked up at the horrified crowd, his expression calm, cold, and terrifyingly protective. Anyone who touches her, Phoenix said, his voice quiet but carrying through the silent hall, dies. Police swarmed the room. As they dragged a sobbing, broken Ethan away, he screamed Crystal's name. She told me to do it. Crystal told me to kill them. She said if they were dead, I'd get the money. The police stopped. All eyes turned to Crystal. She tried to run, but security blocked the exits. She looked at my parents, tears streaming down her face, her ultimate weapon.
No. He's lying.
I tried to stop him. Mom. Dad, please. Mom walked up to Crystal. Her face was made of stone. Don't you dare call me Mom, she hissed. I remember you. You're the girl from the orphanage. The one who stalked us. Mrs. Wilson, please. Take her away, Dad commanded. Investigate her. If she conspired to murder my daughter, I want her to rot. As they dragged Crystal past me, our eyes met. You knew, she screamed at me. You knew this would happen. You planned this. I leaned in close, so only she could hear. See you in 15 years, sister. Ethan was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted murder and assault. His mental state deteriorated rapidly, and he was eventually transferred to a high-security psychiatric facility. The trauma of his childhood, combined with his own toxic choices, had consumed him. Crystal was charged with conspiracy. Without the Wilson money to pay for good lawyers, she crumbled. She gave up everyone she knew in the criminal underworld to try and get a reduced sentence, but she still ended up with 10 years. She would spend her youth in a cell, exactly where she belonged. My parents were broken for a while. They had lost their biological son. But this time, they didn't have to adopt a replacement. They had Phoenix. And they had me. We healed. We moved on. 5 years later, I sat in the garden of the new estate Phoenix had bought. It was autumn, and the ginkgo leaves were falling, just like the day I brought him home. Phoenix walked out onto the terrace, 2 glasses of wine in his hand. He was the CEO of Evergreen now, a titan of industry. But when he looked at me, he was still the boy who promised to fight 10 kids to protect me. He sat down beside me and handed me a glass. I visited the facility today, he said quietly. Ethan?
Yes.
He doesn't remember who he is anymore. He just sits there, rocking back and forth, muttering about a sister named Crystal. I took a sip of wine. And Crystal? Released on parole last week, Phoenix said casually. She tried to get a job at one of our subsidiaries under a fake name. I had her blacklisted from every major corporation in the state. She's currently washing dishes at a roadside diner 3 towns over. I nodded. It was enough. They were alive, suffering the mediocrity and hardship they had tried to force upon me. Phoenix turned to me, his dark eyes intense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Willow, he said, you gave me a home when I was nothing. You gave me a life. You said I could stay until I decided to leave. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant, with a diamond that caught the sunlight. I never want to leave, he said. I want to protect you for the rest of this life and the next. I looked at the ring, then at him, the boy who had been beaten for me, the man who had built an empire for me. In my past life, I died alone, betrayed by my own blood. In this life, I had chosen my own family, and nothing is thicker than the blood you shed for each other. I smiled and extended my hand. You promised, Phoenix, I whispered. Forever. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed my hand. Forever.